I even bookmarked your
Well, thank you.
just so I could come to it easy. There you go. Oh, hello, folks. Are we up? All right, Gavina and Susan, here we are tonight. The monitor's not working, Chris. They didn't bother to check the monitor right. But anyway, ma'am, we're glad you can make it with us.
It's good to be with you.
I think we are on.
We are on?
Yeah, it doesn't show it, but anyway, yeah. Thank you for being here with us, ma'am. We understand you got a really tough race ahead of you. You're running against one of the most well-established incumbents out there.
Well, you know, I am running for the position. It was a position that my home sits in, and it's one of the new open seats, so I'm excited about that.
New open seats. Oh, he's
It's a
with.
new district.
Yes,
Oh, okay, but it's
No
still
incumbent.
there's no incumbent.
there isn't.
No.
I thought you was running against you know who.
Yeah, but it's a new district, so the new district has no incumbent.
Right.
So
He's
he's
in.
got to compete just like she does.
Yes,
Yes, it's
like,
a even
But
playing
he's-
field.
there we are.
You have me confused there for a minute. Yeah, but he's still Congressman Doggett.
Yes,
Yes.
yes,
Okay.
he's still Congressman
He's
Doggett,
a
and,
well-established incumbent,
yes.
whether it's a new seat or not.
And we want to thank you for appearing with us at this last minute. At the last, we had a cancellation.
We had a
and-
cancellation from the music people who I told months ago could come on, and then at the last minute they decided that, oh, they got cold feet or something, you know.
Well, I'm glad that we were able to be here with you tonight. I look forward to the conversation.
Yes, ma'am, because I see I'm really running out of Mondays fast, and I'm trying to get as many candidates on as I can before.
So we're 85 days from the election.
Ooh,
Well, that's
And,
about 8 Mondays I think I have that are open, and I know Gavino has got inside with a lot of the school board candidates. We've always tried to focus on the down ballot candidates. We've had U.S. congressional candidates on before, and we've even had one senator on before.
Well, very good.
But usually it's all local stuff. So let's start with it. Let's hear about, tell us who you are, where you come from, stuff like that.
Well, thank you, Pokey. And before I begin, I would just like to extend my condolences to all that were affected by the shooting at Texas A&M this afternoon and the loss of life that was experienced there. It was a sad day to hear that. So I just wanted to extend that first. I'm excited to be here with you. I'm the former 3-term mayor of San Marcos and also city council member prior to that. But more importantly, I'm an American citizen that loves her country. I have worked in this country, lived in the district for 16 years. I'm a mom, a grandmother, a small business owner. And I started serving my community just as a volunteer, like many other citizens do, especially in smaller communities, to make a positive contribution to the city that they love. So, that's a little bit about my public service.
How about education, small business? But I was in dump trucks myself.
I've actually worked in trash a little bit myself. As I've been in the staffing industry for 24 years, and so you get the opportunity to put people to work in many different fields.
Yes,
So we
ma'am.
would send people to work at different businesses. So I would very often have to go out and do the task so that I could understand how to describe it to the people that I was putting to work. So that's really the business that has sustained me over the years is 24 years in the staffing industry, creating jobs, helping people find their niche, and then knowing about the type of work that's available and more importantly, how many people may not be able to find a job and in what areas their expertise is, but they cannot find a job in. So those are things I think will be important as I go into Congress.
as a 3-term mayor in San Marcos, what are some of the projects that you worked on during your tenure and your governance of San Marcos that you would bring or you could highlight a trophy and to convince the voters of this District 35 that you should be our next congressperson for District 35?
Well, I thank you for that question because when you work for the local citizens, you are right there on the ground with them, and it gives you the opportunity to hear from them what their vision is for the community and your opportunity to try to implement programs to help them achieve their vision. And some of the things that we did that I was very proud of is that over the tenure that I was mayor is that we managed to grow the economy but not increase the taxes to our citizens. There was only one time that we increased taxes, and that was when the citizens themselves voted to increase the taxes because they wanted to purchase some parkland or some other specific things. But we were able to manage the growth of San Marcos without increasing property taxes. So I think that's an important accomplishment. Along with that, we brought more open government and opportunities for exchanges between the citizens and their elected officials. And then we created several thousand jobs during that tenure, and we increased our parkland. We had a balance. We were able to have communication about what's important about basic government and how it functions, and then if there are extra things that we happen to be able to fit in the budget, we would have a list of things that the citizens had already said to us were important. And that might be more safety, securing water long into the future, because you know water is a big issue in Texas. So we were able to accomplish those goals. And the Embassy Suites, you said you were just in our city not
Yes,
long ago, and that was a very important project for our tourism industry. And that was our first hotel that offered full service, so we were excited about that. And I think one of my all-time favorites was the Rio Vista transformation of the falls that has just made our river beautiful and functional and welcomes
Well,
all
it was
citizens.
always beautiful and functional, I thought.
It was, but it was.
Now it's even more
we had
so.
a dam that was failing, and so we found a way to do something unique and different and restore it back to its original condition, but also make it more beautiful for our local citizens to come out and picnic and float the river.
Well, growing up in Central Texas and in Austin, like I mentioned to you earlier before we came on the show, I have aunts that lived in San Marcos back in the 60s and 70s. And one of the sites that we will always frequent as that was a trip for the weekend was Aquarina Springs.
Yes.
Could you tell me a little bit more of what transpired or what? I really lost track as to, I don't know if it's still there, or but I knew it was a big attraction way back
Yes.
when.
Well, I grew up in San Antonio, so I don't know how many of you would remember that everybody wanted to take the field trip to Aquarina to see
Right.
Ralph the swimming pig. But now Ralph hasn't lived there for a while, but the springs are beautiful, and they're doing a wonderful restoration project there to retain its natural beauty. And it's really turned into a research center for water under the direction of the university. And so it still has visitors. It's still a great place for people to educate. In fact, my husband Mike and I, we were actually married at Aquarina Springs, and it was a beautiful setting.
Good.
What kind of if you get to the Congress and you're at the desk, what kind of bills or legislation do you think you would sign on to, or even maybe sponsor, that would help? We go back to this water again. Texas does have some weird water things. I've never heard of this right of capture on water, and this is I don't know if that's state or federal, but I know if there's a good chance you will see some kind of water bills coming across your desk, which could affect Central Texas.
Yes. Well, when I get to Washington in January of 2013, my desire is to really do what I think is important, which is to have less of the federal government involved in our daily lives, allowing the people closest to their government to have more opportunity to solve their problems, and that the federal government should take less of our money so it stays closer to you all and to all of us, so we can affect change at our city and our state, because it's different from each of our 50 states.
Well, how about this? I'm thinking of the Federal Endangered Species Act. Would that have precedence over if you really had a good water project in Texas, but it was stopped because of the federal?
Well,
do you think you could tell them forget it, or?
Well, my local experience with the
I know the
federal
environment's
government.
a pretty big issue on a
Well,
lot of people.
You know, most citizens that I know, we love our environment, and we're conservationists, and we bring our children up that way. But what I've found is that when you have the federal government involved in every decision at the state level, it really keeps you sometimes from doing the very best for your people and your environment. So again, I think just releasing some of those regulations so that the state has a department that regulates the state of Texas on environment, and I believe that's where those decisions should remain. It gives us more of a say in what we want and need.
I also have witnessed some of the economic growth in San Marcos even in the last 10 years. More recently, in addition to the Bobcat Stadium.
Yes.
And so I know that, again, being real close to San Marcos, now we have the stretch from Austin almost connecting San Antonio. You see San Marcos,
Yes.
Buda. So what
There's
type
no more
of-
countryside in between.
Absolutely. What's your position on rail going from Austin to San Antonio and using federal funds or trying to use federal funds? What's your position on that particular project?
Well, as an elected official, it was incumbent upon me to listen to the citizens that I served. And in San Marcos, that was an effort that people supported. They supported it because we were a small town with a large university. We had a lot of traffic on our roads, a lot of people coming in and out. But the one thing I made sure of as mayor that they understood is that there was a price tag to that. And that the local price tag at that time was averaged about, per every stop on the rail trip, would be about $2 million right out of the local federal government budget. I mean, the local government budget. So as you know, I think it's important, as long as you are communicating to your citizens the cost and effect of something, and they feel that that's what they want, then you know, that has to be part of what helps you make a decision. So in regards to rail, at that time, it was something that San Marcos supported. I, again, have a concern when we're using federal dollars for things that I don't believe were intended the federal government to do. And so, again, if you keep the transportation dollars, you know, Texas gives a lot of money to transportation, and we get less back than many other states. And so if we were able to be treated comparably, we would have more dollars. And again, the state and the local citizens could use that. And if they determined that rail was important, they'd be able to pay for it themselves. So I think those are things that we would look at. But again, I would tend to say, let's let the local people make that decision.
I'm going to stick with transportation here just a minute, because sometimes the federal side of it can be bigger too. You know, our governor got in a lot of trouble for the Trans-Texas Corridor,
Yes.
which is something I don't know if I supported that, but I'm sure you've noticed there's a lot of trucks on Interstate 35.
Yes, there are. And in fact, as mayor, I was asked to serve on a committee that was now called the My35 plan. And that was the I-35 Advisory Committee. And a lot of hours and a lot of public comment was brought together to try to take a different view of what was needed, because the problem still exists. We have a lot of traffic, and we don't have ways to move our commerce in the way that we need to in order to keep our own local economy going. And so in that My35 plan, you will see recommendations that came from the grassroots level, from people participating with ideas of how to address the transportation. And I think it's a good plan, and it's recently just been rolled out from the Highway Commission.
Were you a member of the San Antonio Corridor committee or?
No, sir, I was not serving in that capacity. One of my colleagues sat on that board.
Okay.
However, they would give us reports on what were some of the things that they were working on. I served on CAPCOG and CAMPO in representing my city as mayor.
Okay,
But
well,
we did support that effort.
The effort,
Uh-huh.
okay.
yeah, that'll be, transportation is always a big thing. You get to DC, spending cuts. We're spending too much money. Where do you think we're going to cut at?
Well, my first thought when I get to Washington is that to take a look at some of the agencies that have been created that shouldn't have been created,
Obama's
that are duplications of services that are provided at the state and local level. And when you do that, you'll automatically see cuts. I also think that we need to just look at everything that we're spending our money on and get back to saying, is this the job of the federal government? Definitely we need to have a strong defense, so we need to make sure that we fund our military properly and that we honor them properly. When they come back, they should get the things that they so well deserve. So those are areas. I believe on Social Security, we do have to come up with a solution for that. But I think for those of us that have paid into it, and I'm not going to count myself in that yet, but I'm getting close, that we should honor that commitment and fund all of that. And then looking forward, look at different options for the generations that are coming after us, because we can't continue the way that we're doing. So those may be some of the things that we look at first.
10-4, comparing to Congressman Doggett, how will you do it differently? Will he not look at these things and cut too? I guess not. Since he's been creating some of them, I suppose.
Well, you know, I can't speak for his record. I can just talk to you about what I will do when I get there.
What would you do differently, I guess I'm asking?
Well, I would not have voted for the Health Care Act, for one example that's on the top of mind of everyone. And again, I don't support the federal government doing everything and taking responsibilities when we should be personally responsible for our own lives and our own dreams. And so a lot of the way I will make decisions will be based on the premise that we are individuals and we're accountable to that. So I think we have a very different approach to what we think America is and what we want America to be.
That's very good. I like that.
Yep. Well, let me see if I can defend my friend.
Yeah, tough. That's it. I'm waiting on it now.
Well, one of the things that, I want to talk about the district and how it was drawn by the legislature. This new District 35, that's where there is no incumbent, and it's an open seat. It stretches from East Austin.
I think we got a map there in a minute.
Do you have a map? Okay.
It'll be on the screen, I think, in a second.
All the way into central San Antonio. So what is your approach and your strategy in reaching out to the constituents in this very, unique and stressful, district?
It is a unique and diverse district. As we see the map up there, you can see it just pretty much follows along I-35. And what I love about it is my husband and I have lived and worked right in the middle of that district for me for the last 16 years. My husband has been there for a long time, since he was 8 years old. And also, having served in the center as the mayor, I was already in tune with things that were going on and the needs of the people north of us. And I grew up in San Antonio. And it's such a rich culture, and there are many similarities to things that are important to the people of San Antonio and Bexar County, to the people of San Marcos. And I see this as an opportunity to tie the two cities together that sometimes don't work well together. And I think collectively we can achieve so much more, and this seat provides the linkage to do that. So that excites me. There are differences of things that are important, but there are so many things that we agree upon, from the needs of water, you all talked about that, the transportation needs, that this allows us to have a conversation that we might not otherwise have had.
Yeah, and like I mentioned, it's a very changing geographic area as well.
Yes.
Because, like I mentioned earlier, now you can travel from almost Austin to San Antonio, and there's just
Used to be a lot of countryside in
It used to
between.
be countryside. Now there's a lot of development along the whole corridor, and those are growth challenges
Yes,
that you will be facing. Once you get to Washington. And one of the things that I want to ask is, what type of federal programs were you able to work with as mayor in San Antonio, in San Marcos, in reference to economic development, in reference to investment, bringing jobs to the area?
Sure. Well, under my tenure, we primarily worked with the state when creating jobs.
Okay.
When the few things that we did get help from the federal government, and to me were appropriate, were when we wanted to have an air traffic control tower at our airport. Since I view anything coming in our airspace as part of our defense plan, it seemed appropriate that we would have some help. Senator Hutchison and Senator Cornyn were very big players in helping us to achieve our local goals of San Marcos striving to be a reliever airport in some way for all the traffic that comes into the Austin Bergstrom Airport. So that to me was an appropriate way, and because of that, it did stimulate some new jobs out at the airport. But when I think of some of the bigger things that we did, really the governor's economic development team really did a great job at helping cities to bring in companies. We brought in Grifols, which is a Spanish company, a very high-tech medical bio company, with the help of the governor's office, and his staff were very helpful in that. And there were, several other companies that we brought in with those assistants, but that was more at the state level.
Did y'all receive any federal stimulus fund monies in San Marcos?
To my recollection, I believe we were asked to submit through Campo. And so we would go through the process of submitting projects that were intended to be shovel-ready. Transportation Campo projects. San Marcos wasn't high on the list of the needs, and also the critical thing there was the time allocated to get the money and spend it. It wasn't a functional process. And we kept having to go back and redo the reports and submit the information. So at the time of my leaving office, I believe we may have qualified for one or two projects through Campo, but those were regional things that we had to come together on. So it wasn't a direct from San Marcos to the federal government. It was through
Campo.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay.
Taxes. See any changes coming up in the tax policy if you get in the house?
Oh, yes. I believe that it should be simplified, and I'd like...
Before we do, I can't get, he is an incumbent, your buddy.
Okay.
I mean, you can't just say it's an
Well,
open seat. I don't see how we can
It's
do
an
that.
open seat because it's a new district.
It's an open seat because he's not an
If-
incumbent in 35.
If he were to be running in District 25, then he would be the sitting
But
incumbent.
he's been sitting in the house down there for how
Well,
long?
But, oh my God, I don't know.
This will be his 10th term
10th term?
20 years.
on this in this role, but he's been in the government for many more
Yeah,
years.
before this, he was, he worked with several of them at the State House.
But what's, again, I think what's exciting, and for the people to
I
understand...
didn't mean to cut us off
That-
like that. I just had to go to this one point there that it
That's-
just doesn't seem right to call Congressman Doggett anything but an incumbent.
Well, your people made him
My people have tried to get rid of him so many times, so many different ways.
Well, let me tell you what I understand about the redistricting process that no one can really
All right, let's
understand.
dwell on that for a little while.
But, you know, the objective is when you have so much growth in our area, and Texas has just grown, we have to go in and look at where the population bases are and somehow come up with a map that would divide that as equally as you can based on population. And then, you know, you have a process that they go through. So population is important, and then you look at can someone from either party be elected? Is it equitable to someone that might be considered a minority? Can they be elected? And so all of those things are going on while we're on the outside, you know, just trying to understand that. But this district and the uniqueness of it was that this is pretty much the map that was adopted by our state legislation. Which I agree with, because we sent our elected officials to the state house to make decisions, and they did their job. And sometimes it favors one party or another, but that's just based on who the people put in office to make those decisions. So even through all of the months of what's it going to look like, at one point Travis was going to be out and Atascosa was going to be in, and you know, people were wondering, and they would ask me, and I said, no, I really believe that most of this district is going to stay intact. What is important to me is that I live in the district, although that's not a requirement. I have lived in the district. I want to serve the people that I know and I love. And more importantly, I just believed that it was positioned for the betterment of Central Texas, to become a strong advocate for Texas, and Texas to take some of our values to Washington. And so I look forward to that very much. And I will say that on day one, I filed in this district, and I never changed my mind about where I wanted to serve. And so when you talk about open seat and incumbency, I was the first to file on, at that time, in the Republican nomination. And I'm so honored to now be the nominee to go forward in the November election.
Were you the sole candidate for the primary, or you had an
No, I
opponent?
had two opponents in the
Okay.
primary, and I was blessed enough to win.
Well, good. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Well, let's talk about it.
Well, hold on. I was going to ask you about the tax day before I
okay.
got sidetracked. But I'm still sidetracked because after the redistricting, and I can't seem to grasp all this voting, the minority voting rights thing and all this, and how this had so much to do with the redistricting. But we're not going to go into that. Let's stick with tax, and then we'll let Mr. Covino go on with what he was going to ask.
All right.
Okay.
Go ahead.
You
We'll
wanna
save taxes.
speak on the taxes? Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead and tell
ahead.
us where were we?
On taxes.
There. What are you going to do when you get in the house about taxes?
Well, I talked about how I thought should go through and look at the agencies that were not intended to be, and those would make automatic cuts or changes. I have governed before, and so I understand that there are needs and necessities in order to have efficient and effective government. But sometimes that can get out of control, as it has in Washington. And so we need to send people that are just like you and I, that have to sit down at the dinner table and say, this is what we can afford, and this is what our priorities are, and this is what we need to do for a time. And while that can be hard and maybe a little painful, in the end, I think we can agree that once we've done that, whether it's at our home and our business, that we have a brighter future because we made some important decisions. So that's what I would do.
I didn't mean to get laughed away there, but you say you sit down and you got to figure out where you got to make the cuts, what you got to do next. Well, what we did in my house was we bought Chinese truck tires.
Not,
Hey,
instead
Hey, they're
of
a lot
American,
cheaper than
instead of American, you didn't buy it.
well.
And that's
you're
and
looking
that
at
is something.
About $200 for virgin rubber.
Well, we
That's
do
about
need
the
to
price
cut.
of a recap.
We
here
do
in
need to
town.
cut regulation because it's causing so many of our own companies to not be
What was
competitive
that
in the
supposed to
global
do? That's
market.
another thing. Why couldn't we? I mean, they're quality tires. They're virgin rubber. These brand new truck tires, industrial products.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a shame. But of course, I blame mostly Gavino's unions and Democrat trial lawyers on that. But
let's go
I'm
on
not
to
quite sure what you could do about that on the tax
Well,
end. But
I mean, I still think there's ways to free up companies and entrepreneurs to be able to compete, and part of that has to do with minimizing regulation at the federal level that is so intrinsic that it causes us to be not be able to compete in the global
you
marketplace.
couldn't compete. And this was made with Remington. Not to stay on this for a minute, but this was Remington tooling,
Mm-hmm.
meaning that Remington truck tire manufacturers simply shipped all their equipment to China, and
Well, we
was good business.
face losses of jobs by that happening, and you can bring that even a little more locally when we've had companies even in San Marcos that have left to have plants in Mexico because it was more affordable or better
about
for the
Mexican
bottom
tires before,
line.
too?
So we need to change that because we should be proud to buy American. And
well, I would be, but like I say, for the price of a recap,
Mm-hmm.
I was getting brand new tires. Makes it hard to.
well, we've got to do something so that we can buy from each other. When our friends and neighbors have an idea and they invest in that idea or that product and they bring it to market, I would hope that as Americans we would want to support each other and buy that product. But I understand economics, and if you can buy it cheaper somewhere and
I
you
had
have a
to tighten
budget,
my
you
belt.
have to do that. So we need to work on that.
well, Walmart. A lot of their products come from China. So
They have a big office over there.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I wanted to ask you your opinion or your positions on two very important issues because this is a very heavy Latino district
Yes.
as well. One, what's your position on the DREAM Act? And the other one is on immigration reform.
Well, I have not supported the DREAM Act in the way that it is written. I think everyone should have an opportunity to further their education. And I'm a big fan of everybody having a dream. The question for me is always, what level does government have to play at every turn in order for us to achieve the things that we want personally? And through hard work, my own life, there's been times when I've worked 2 jobs as a single mom to make ends meet, to achieve the goals that I would have. And I just think that we need to find a way to make education affordable so that people that choose to continue their education aren't saddled with a large debt, but at the other hand, it's not the government that has to step in to solve that problem. So I would work hard because as a GED recipient who attended South San High School in San Antonio, I made a choice in my life earlier, and I learned to educate myself on the job and through seminars and programs and ways that you can learn different things that help you further your career. And you know, as a small business owner today, I know the importance of education. But again, the question for me is the idea that we cannot, one, make education affordable so that we don't have to have the government stepping in to help fund it.
Well, you know, the DREAM Act lost, I think, the last time by 4 or 5 votes. So we have elected officials from both parties that support it as well as oppose it. So the other issue is on immigration reform. What role would you play once you would get to Washington on that legislation that has been, you know, ping pong, if you will,
Around,
back and
yes.
forth, back and forth. What position
Well-
or what strategy or efforts would you work on in regards to the immigration reform issue?
Well, I believe that our country was made great by those that immigrated here legally. My family did that, many generations of Americans. And it's that richness of culture that brings America to the place that it is, that people are envious to want to come here. I think the way I would attack it is we must make the legal immigration process more efficient and able to get people that have waited in line so long through and in American, come into America in that way. And then on the issue of what I call illegal entry, we have to address our safety and security of our borders and not have those coming in that could harm our country. But with my staffing industry background, I understand that there are many jobs that are in America that we actually need to have the workforce that comes in from the borders. And so we have to come up with a plan that addresses the economic needs of America while addressing our security issues. And so I'm more in favor of some type of a plan that allows us to allow people to come in that are coming in for work and work, and if they choose, work through some type of a fair and efficient immigration process, but still be very strong on defense and security at the borders.
Guest worker type program?
Well, you can call it that. I mean, it's been called
No amnesty, just
no amnesty, but a process that's fair. And I have heard stories on both sides. Again, my staffing industry experience, your heart breaks when you have people come in to apply for a job and they have a false ID, but they want to work. So
Yeah.
you can't hire them, and you have to ask them and show them how to go back through the process so that they can come in and work legally and then get in line to become an American citizen. It's still great that we're still the greatest country in the world and that people want to come here. And my desire is to retain that ideal that people will come and have a better life in America, do it legally, come here and work in the areas that we need workers, and then shut down the borders to those that would come in with, whether that be illegal drugs or human trafficking or all the things that are happening that harm all of our families.
Well, you know, we used to go to the border a lot and pick up trash. You can hermetically seal a border, and there's still going to be dope as long as somebody wants it. I'm almost I get in trouble. I say we'd have to shoot drug users to legalize drugs. Is there another solution? But I'm not going to ask you that question because we're supposed to have our announcement time for things coming up.
Sure.
But we haven't touched on a lot of other things. And I wanted to keep on this immigration thing because, you know, my old friend Paul Workman got in a lot of trouble for offering what I thought was a pretty sensible bill in the State House last legislative session. And I understand where you're coming from. A lot of people don't understand. They say, get rid of all of them. They say, no, I bought Chinese tires. There was a Mexican put them on. So,
Well, again, it's a capitalist-driven
Yeah.
commodity, and I think that that was one of the big motivations behind former President Reagan when he did his program on I guess guest workers or the immigration issue, is because farmers in California were having their crops just die on the
Yes.
in the fields because no one else wanted to work the fields, and they were short of
not
labor.
for that price anyway.
So, yeah, and I think that going back to buying from each other and working from each other and keeping these jobs from going further out, I think it would be
Well, good,
a
because you know
wise
I want to
and-
go through next.
Okay. go
Welfare.
ahead. Okay.
Uh, I guess in the federal government, you will have something to say about this. I've heard, I don't quite understand. It seems to me like if you're going to be taking government assistance, you should either have to do a dope test, maybe give a work program of some kind in the morning, look for a job in the afternoon, or vice versa.
Well,
Or,
I would agree that we
what
have.
would you do to try to clean it up? I guess I'm asking. I don't know how
Well,
to
I
phrase it
think-
into a question.
Yeah, well, you're talking welfare reform, and I think that we have to look hard at, there are safety net programs that are important. But
Yeah.
but again, I think if we have less money coming into the federal government, more of our tax money staying closer to the people at the state and the local level, then each state will have the right to decide what type of programs they need in order to have those community safety net programs. And there are some that are needed. But the question for all of us is it the federal government's job to take more tax money from us and then sit up there and try to find out how to best serve the people when they're the farthest away from them? So I think that's an important question for all of us to ask. I also will say, having again been in the staffing industry, I don't believe that unemployment was ever intended to be a career choice. And we've now extended it so far out that it's attractive to not go to work. And I don't know what the statistic is today, but about 3 months ago there was a statistic that said we had over 700,000 manufacturing jobs available in the United States that day, and we couldn't fill them with our own people. And that it was a combination of not having raised a generation that felt that those type of jobs were important enough, and it was also because they may not pay the highest, and because you could stay at home drawing an unemployment
And
check
make more money.
and make more money. And so that is not what America's belief system is. We've all grown up where we're supposed to work hard for our own, and I think we have to get control of that. But you're always going to find that I have the same type of outlook that you would. I believe that I best represent the people because I am you. I work every day for a living. My husband works at a manufacturing plant. We own a small business. I'm a grandmother. I have some of the kids went to college and some were in the military. And I myself, I believe, have been successful just by the idea that I knew that America didn't limit my dreams. And that's the kind of America that I want every kid to have an opportunity to know.
In regards to small business, I had this jotted down, and now that you mentioned that you yourself are a small business person, what type of assistance or resources would you make available to help local local struggling businesses in small communities like San Marcos, Buda, Kyle, and those communities in that within this district?
Well, I know you're going to get tired of me saying this, but you know, as a local elected official, there were times when local companies would come forward and say that if we could get some waivers on our permits, if you could help us get the paperwork done for the state, we would be able to create local jobs. And I think if the government can function as a conduit to help with the processes that are available, then that's the role that we should take. We also at times made decisions to help financially, but one of the things that we always did was we looked at it just like you would a business, and we said, okay, if this company can come in and create a certain amount of jobs at a certain amount of pay rate, as long as what we're doing doesn't cause us to increase the tax on the people that we're serving in order to help this occur, then that might be something we should assist in. So I think you're going to see me in Washington looking at that and saying, if this program that we have in Washington could be better served by being housed locally and done more efficiently, and it actually drives dollars to where it can help more people in the sense of job creation, that should be done at the local level.
I like tax breaks for small businesses.
Well,
I'm thinking if I could quick, if I buy a brand new dump truck, I can write off the depreciation, which encourages you to buy another truck.
yes.
And it also puts people to work building another truck, unless of course they go buy a Mercedes-Benz truck or something. And
Well, I do support tax plan that supports small business. So that's part of that fair or flat tax that everybody could understand, and it could be applied to individuals, small businesses. And you know what? I'm not going to sit here and say that large businesses aren't important. They are.
they are.
So I just think in our system we have to support the job creators, and that's not Washington.
10-4.
Your experience in working with different governments, as when you were mayor, for example, the school district, the state, and other governmental entities. Talk to us a little bit about that type of experience that you bring to the table in regards to this specific position, because going to Washington, you will have to work with other
Yes.
Congress people
Yes.
in order to move forward any issue or legislation.
Yes, and you know, I feel that that's the role that an elected representative has, is to go to Washington first to set limited good public policy for our country so that we can prosper as a country. We're still the United States of America. And then for my district, when we know what a particular city needs are, in the district or a county needs are, we should be open to hearing what they suggest the solution is, and then my job is to try to make that their solution effective. And we did that. I worked with the university when we had opportunities to work together and support each other in regards to the San Marcos River and the riverbank stabilization and some of the programs that the money was in Washington. So we would go collectively trying to be sure that we didn't cause a duplication. I can remember one instance when the university was approaching for money on the same thing that the city had a project, and I led the council to say, let's not both go at the same time. Let the university's project complete, because it was further along in the process and it was at the headwaters, and so once that gets stabilized, we can go the next time. And that's what we did. Every day we had to work together with the county to address our road problems. And again, the key there is to do it so that you're not duplicating services, so that the people would be aware that if you want certain roads done, it might require a road bond, that they get to vote on that, and but that they know that they're not going to be paying the city, the county, and the state something just for one road. So we would go in a plan. We would plan together, and we would act that plan out in such a way that we would create an efficient system of government. And we were able, one of my big projects was the Wonder World extension. And San Marcos had no overpasses until I was able to help complete like a 12 or 15 year process to get our first overpass where we could go over the trains and get to our hospital. And that required the government to work together to make that happen.
Andy, as busy as that track is.
Oh,
Yes.
yeah.
And we had the most at-grade crossings than any city in the area, so that was an important safety issue. But the Wonder World extension is a good example of the city, the county, and the state working together to leverage our tax dollars, which basically when you go to Washington to ask for your tax dollars, you're just asking for them back.
Correct.
So we went for that road, which was important to our community. We were able to leverage a $10 million appropriation, and then we used that to leverage another 30, 40 million at the state level. And then we bonded it, we got the money to do it, but it's on a payback from the state. So we were able to complete a project, not increase taxes for the citizens, and do it together. So you do have to work together, and I know how to do that.
Good, and just by your explanation of how you work with all government and all entities, having worked for a former elected official myself, chief of staff at the county, and having done or gone through those experiences, in my opinion, I think there is a very strong, you are a very strong person and show that kind of capability of working with all to address or bring an issue that's important to the community, and being able to not only work with Republicans but also with the Democrats, because a lot of times the need of an issue supersedes
It does.
political parties. So
It can, yes.
in your testimony, my personal view is that I think we'd be in great hands,
Well, thank
in this
you.
district.
I'd like to run a couple of quick things.
Okay.
Okay.
A couple of quick things here before we run out of time. I had so much more I wanted to ask you about, and we get to just anyway.
Okay.
Minimum wage. Get rid of it, keep it, modify it.
I think that we need to leave it where it is for now and not continue the increase of it, because it makes it more difficult for businesses to hire our young people because of the cost of it. Again, the free market will set the standard if we would just stop trying to manage it. And I say that knowing what it's like to wait tables, and I'm trying to even remember what I made at the time. I think it was, 25 cents. I don't know, you wait tables and then you get the balance in your tips. I can remember making $3.75 an hour, and it's tough sometimes. But whenever you start escalating that minimum wage and saying that it doesn't matter if somebody has done the job before or they have the experience, you have to pay a certain wage, you're automatically creating a non-competitive environment, and people won't take a risk on somebody that's never done the job before. So I think we need to leave it as it is right now and then take a look at that. I'm not a big fan of coming in and saying, just get rid of everything. But methodically, you must look and not be afraid to look at every program in order to deliver.
No slash and burn. I
Yes.
call those the $10 Big Mac people.
Any,
Keep raising. Well, quick, we got to go to energy too.
all right.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Energy.
All right,
Energy.
energy. The Department of Energy. Do we really need it? Are they doing any good? Alternative fuels, that do any good? Keystone Pipeline was cut. Deepwater drilling, since we had a little problem in Louisiana, they don't want to, but am I going too fast? Let's go back
No, you're not going too fast.
to Department of Energy.
Well, I think
That's a
that
big bill they got. I'd like to get me a job down there.
Well, I think that energy has to be an all of the above solution. In other words, we have to look at every approach that we can. I would be in favor of the Keystone Pipeline because
I haven't
it's
even got into
creating
alternatives
jobs.
yet, like-
Well, I think there's a place for alternatives, but the market will determine that. Just like anything, when you bring something to market, at first it's too expensive for the average person to use.
Research and development.
And yet once you let it, begin its own life cycle, people will purchase it if they believe it's the best thing for them. So I don't think that the government should be involved in demanding that we have to buy certain types of energy or
Certain
regulating
types
us.
of light bulbs or
or regulating us to death with no, you can't buy certain things in order to create a market that isn't ready yet. But as you've seen, you've got your laptop out. You know, there was a time when regular folks couldn't afford that, but over time it became more affordable. So I think the
And
same
smaller.
thing. The same thing can happen on energy, but we have to be willing. We
We've all got one of these, huh?
we have to be willing to use everything we have available and not be afraid to use what we have right here at home. Because I can tell you as an elected official, there is a need for some type of regulation at some points, but it's already been regulated. And we ask that you just allow us to work within the current regulations and not keep lopping on more and more to where it becomes, people just say, I can't invest. I can't finish my project. And I saw that happen. And it invariably was because they couldn't understand what to expect next. And I was reading in my own staffing magazine just on the way over here, and I can't remember if the percentage was 45% or 48% of small business owners across the nation, they don't know if their best days are ahead of them. So they are not willing to say we can stay in business or we can hire more people until they feel more certain. And the only way they're going to feel more certain
No
is
capital investments until you know what's.
yeah, until you know what to expect from your government, and that's not too much to ask.
True.
Want to hit some announcements before we run out of time?
Yeah, but I got to ask you some more questions.
Okay.
Like the my other three, wind, solar, and I'm a big nuclear man. I understand the research and development driven by the market is what got us. That's how these computers got so small. That it wasn't the government
Right.
providing research R&D dollars. And we've seen recently a lot of government dollars go into like solar power plants. I mean, solar plant manufacturers that would belly up. So you wouldn't favor anything like that, I suppose.
Well, I just favor the opportunity for the free market to take place. And I'm not afraid to explore in areas that allow us to use our own energy source here in America. We can do it safely, and we can
Deepwater
deliver
drilling?
it. If we can do it
We got the
safely, we
technology
should
for
do
it
it.
now.
We should do it. And it will automatically bring down the price for the consumer.
The product,
Yes,
one
sir.
problem out
Right.
of so many. NASA, so much of this research and development did come, I guess, from government spending it away. NASA. Would you be willing to vote for a bill that would increase funding or put us back in space?
Well, I think we have to compete in all levels. It's part of just, well, first of all, I think it's all American. I do think that there are some things that the federal government has to take the lead on, and I think being in space is important. And I would say that we need to do that in the future. And I would support a reasonable amount of funding to continue that in such a way that we can keep us ahead and competitive from our other competing countries.
So much for my project then, huh? I wanted an aircraft carrier
Well,
in space. Up there.
Yeah.
Anyway,
well, I think when the federal government steps into a program, it should be for the benefit of the majority of citizens. So if it's just something you want, I would say no.
well, for science, or for that case, it would be military, I suppose.
You know, I'm very strong on military, and I believe that we should be the strongest defense in the world, and we should fund it accordingly.
There are so many saying do not militarize space, but I know exactly what the Chinese are doing up there,
Yep.
and I know what the Russians are doing up there.
Well, we definitely
You're doing
need
a
to
little
have
south, but-
intelligence. We have to have intelligence if we want to remain the strong force for good in the world. And the way you do that is through a strong defense. Not that we want to go out and attack. We just simply want people to know that
got
we're
to.
willing to take care of ourselves.
Okay, yeah, we're gonna
Okay.
run out
You're
quick.
gonna run out.
Do we want to save? Do announcements quick so we can
Okay,
give her a
two
couple
quick
minutes.
announcements so you can wrap up.
Okay.
One, students that attended Martin Middle School, there'll be a reunion of alumni on September the 29th, 7 p.m. at the office, one of your water holes on 7th Street.
No, I was there over the weekend.
7th in Springdale, so all those alumni that attended Martin Middle School from 1968 on, You're cordially invited to this reunion that's going to occur on September the 29th at 7 p.m. Don't forget to register to vote. If you're not registered, you have until October the 6th to participate in the November 6th election. It's a very, very important election. Not only will we have local elections, bond issues, but we'll also have the opportunity to vote for the next president of the United States. So it's very
As well as
important.
possibly a congressman for half Austin here.
All the local offices. One quick question before you go to your closing. Any scheduled debates?
We still got 3 or 4 minutes.
We haven't been notified of any, but we would welcome the opportunity to speak to the people's issue anytime.
Maybe you can call your buddy up and see if he'll come on down. I bet we can get her back.
All right.
Okay,
He shook my hand a couple times. We're
Yeah.
sort of friendly.
okay.
I'm not Alex Jones or anything. He'll talk to me some.
Okay,
Yeah,
well,
what do we got? 3 minutes left,
3
3.5 minutes?
Why should the people elect you to represent us? You got a question, Pokey?
Yeah, but we'll go on because it is good to have you here.
Well,
And
it-
if
how can
folks
people
wanna
help you?
Yeah, if people
well,
want to volunteer. and
first
help
of all, I appreciate the opportunity to be with both of you, and you asked some great questions.
SusanForCongress.com.
Susan, our vice for Congress. It's SusanForCongress.com.
SusanForCongress.com.
Yes.
I don't see it up there, but
And we would love to have anyone that has an interest in this election and my race. You know, I just believe that I was uniquely positioned with growing up in San Antonio. You know, my dad being military, moving to San Marcos in 1995 and being in the center of what I call the sweet spot on the corridor, and having worked with people up and down the corridor for most of my adult life, that I really truly understand the issues that are facing us. And I believe I can make a difference. And I did that in San Marcos. In San Marcos, I was in a nonpartisan position, so it allowed me the opportunity to work with everyone. And I believe that that's what I can take to Washington, common sense and understanding of what we are facing in our daily lives, and bring that to Washington to really maybe peel back a little bit of what the federal government is doing in our daily lives and give more freedom to the people at the local level to keep more of their own money. And I do believe the federal government's role is to make sure that we are safe and secure. So I would go into that with that, you know, on the top of my mind. But I can't get there without your help. I am, you know, just a regular working class citizen, and I think it's important that we have that kind of representation in Washington. And it's an amazing opportunity to know that I grew up in the district. I've lived in the district. I own a business in the district. My husband works in the district. And I believe I can be the
got
best.
married in the district?
I got married in the district.
Aquafina Springs.
Yes, and all my grandchildren pretty much live in the district, and so I just would welcome the opportunity to meet anyone out there. I ask you to join our campaign. You know, this is the greatest country in America, and it's because of people like you out there that can take great ideas and have the freedom to implement them. And that's basically what I want to do, is go to Washington and ensure that you have that opportunity for your children and grandchildren. So again, I thank you for the time here with me today. I look forward to working for you in Washington.
Thank you, ma'am. It's been great having. Now you heard it here too. If we could get Mr. Congressman Doggett down, you'd be glad to come down and speak with us.
I will.
Okay.
Well, let's see.
We'll make an
Okay.
attempt.
Okay.
Yeah, 10-4. We'll make it a 10. Thank you, folks.
Thank
There's
you so much.
There's plenty more coming out on Trailer Park Show next week after that. We're all in anyway. Come on, just stay tuned in. Channel Austin's got lots of other great shows down there too. Bye bye, folks.
Bye.
I don't know why.